Have you ever been in that position where the moment you hear the name of a particular person or group of people mentioned, you suddenly feel this strong rising anger and you can't tell exactly where it's coming from? Like you cannot trace the exact thing that is making you upset with them. And as you begin to think back on where exactly this started from, as you begin to think back to the point where you started to feel this emotion, you realize that maybe for a while you've been listening to one-sided criticisms of this person or these people. And now you've begun to transfer the same aggression that critic showed to yourself, and you're expressing that frequently. Well, I felt that. I've been in that position quite often, and this is something that I call borrowed anger. That's what we'll be talking about today. What is borrowed anger and how you can avoid it? So if I were to give a specific definition, I would say borrowed anger is the phenomenon that occurs when you begin to internalize and adopt negative emotions or attitudes towards other people based on what you see or hear about them online. So it's like you start to take someone else's anger as your own. And in reality, you've had no personal experience with these people or any concrete reason to feel that way toward them. You know, I love listening to political debates, and I love listening to, debates of all sorts, really. And it just turns out that over time, I start to gravitate towards certain people because maybe they're smart or they have a lot of facts, backing whatever they say. And it's interesting to listen to them because I just like that process of hearing smart people talk. So in general, I spend a lot of time online just watching videos of them talking about different groups, different parties, and what they were doing wrong. Well, I wanted to say right or wrong, but it was mostly what they were doing wrong. And so just this process of listening to them criticize a person or group of people consistently and talk about what they were doing wrong began to affect me. Like I would just be angry, angry at a person or a group of people that I have never met, that have never had any encounter with me, and, people that I probably will never meet. And it just didn't make sense at some point. I realized that I was unnecessarily upset. It was beginning to affect my total well-being, actually. Well, it didn't affect me totally. I wouldn't say my total well-being. Let's just say my mental well-being, right? It was such that I'm in a conversation with someone, maybe one of my friends, and then something comes up about this figure, this well-known figure who I've heard so many criticisms about online, and I express a kind of resentment that is not, common for me. So it got to a point when I, that thing that happens when you're talking, and then it's like you're hearing yourself talk as you talk. You're hearing yourself like a third party. And as I heard myself talk, I was like, okay, this is going too far. I have no idea what I'm saying, and this is not me, and I need to stop this, whatever this is. Like, okay, that is it. Right. And I thought it would be a good idea for me to take a break, and so I just took a break from a lot of the people that I was listening to. I unfollowed a lot of people. They're fine. They're good people. Well, good in the sense that they're okay. They're smart still, and they know what they're talking about in the general sense. But feeding my mind consistently with criticisms was taking a toll on me. Right? I just realized that is not a good way to spend your time. And the truth is, you become what you consume. And I could talk more about this probably in a different episode, but it is one of the defining principles of my life. You become whatever you expose yourself to consistently, right? And sometimes I realized, I also realized then, I do now often when I listen to people, that when they spend a lot of time criticizing others, with time they become cynical. It's like it's important to point out for the benefit of others what some people may be doing wrong and say, okay, this is not right. We need to stop this and all of that. Yeah. That's cool. But when you kind of make a constant habit of criticizing others, it becomes difficult to see the faults in yourself, right? You're not reflective enough, and it takes away your empathy. And I do worry about, people that I follow sometimes online whose career is basically built on criticizing others. I think it's a difficult career because you might start off with good intentions, but you have to be very careful, very, very careful, because it's easy to go from, trying to be the voice of reason to being the voice of resentment. That's a very thin line that they're walking. And now for you and me, and I don't know if you also have such a career, but for I don't, I mean, like, you get what I mean. For you and me, regular people, for you and me, we have more control because we're the ones viewing. And so you have to decide, what do I want to expose myself to? And it can be interesting to hear. It's interesting sometimes when you hear other people being criticized, but it takes a toll on you and your view of the world. Maybe before I go to the next point, I just want you to think about your own self, right? Maybe if not you, have you discovered people around you who began to suddenly express this strong hate for a group, and you're like, where is this coming from? Well, that's one of the dangers of constantly being exposed to that kind of information. And, it can cause division in a home sometimes. I've seen extreme situations where a person is so convinced that a particular group is terrible, and they bring that into their home, and it causes conflict and division. And you're like, that is crazy, but it happens. So now that we know how dangerous that is, how can you avoid going down that rabbit hole and falling into that trap? I would say the first thing is being very conscious, very, very conscious of what you are constantly listening to or watching. You have to take conscious steps towards protecting your mind and your heart. So when you're watching something online, or you realize that a constant type of information is being presented to you, because that's how the algorithms on social media are built. They're built to keep you there. They find what interests you and they stick with it because that works. That keeps you watching. So whatever keeps you there, they stick with it. And you have to be careful once you realize, what I'm watching is taking a certain kind of, I see a pattern here, and I don't think I would like to become what I see here. Then it means that you have to change that, right? And the more you spend time on the things that are feeding the right information into your mind, the more whatever social media platform you're on will feed that to you. And well, for this, I use mostly YouTube, and I really do I strive to tune my YouTube algorithm to what I really, really want to see. So I make sure that I'm focusing on what I want to see, right? And it takes a while, especially if you've had like so much random stuff out there on your YouTube that you do not want to see. It takes a while to clean it up, but if you keep exposing yourself to the themes that you really want to see, YouTube will finally just align itself and figure it out. Yeah. Another thing is verifying the source, accuracy, and completeness of the information that we see online. I was reading the comment section on a particular video, and this is totally unrelated to politics. It was unrelated to important stuff. It was kind of like just entertainment. And I just saw some random bits of information about the person in question. And through those random bits of information, my mind pieced together, all the news that had been in the video. And when I say all the news, I mean, my mind pieced together what it's supposed to be all the news that had been in the video, and I moved on. And after that, I realized that probably was not it. That probably was not where the video was going or what it was intended for. But because I was lazy, I just went to the comments and I pieced together information from, scraps in the comment section, and decided that was what the video was about, and I moved on. And then I told myself, okay, let's pretend I didn't see that. That probably was not it. Since I was too lazy to watch the video, then I don't know what it was talking about. And it takes some sort of intentionality to do this, because very often people will just piece together the bits and pieces of information. Maybe read the header in an article, read the first few lines, just not go through the whole thing and conclude. And we do that very often, and you do that continually and form an opinion that is based on incomplete information. So it's always good to really check out the sources of information, right? And don't just blindly accept what you see or you hear online. Try to check things out for yourself, especially if it's something that is serious enough to elicit such strong emotion from you. Then you should want to base that emotion on something real and not something that is fake, that turns out to be fake. And then you want to have empathy. And that comes from understanding that there are very few people that are entirely brainless, accounting for the outliers. There are very few people, right? And so if an entire group of people has a very different opinion from you or what you consider to be correct, then it does not immediately make those people crazy. They might be crazy, but it doesn't immediately make them crazy, right? Just because they have an entirely different opinion from you. And this is where empathy comes in. You have to realize that people are shaped by their experiences, the things they've been exposed to, and just the general foundations they've had. And probably if you had walked their shoes if from when you were born, you walked in the same shoes as them, you lived your life day after day, you would probably grow up thinking like them, and you probably be like them right now. And so the fact that they have led different lives from you and have a different opinion does not make them crazy. And you have to empathize with that, no matter how far off it is. But I mean, some people actually are crazy, to be fair. But for me, you have to empathize with them either way, and think critically about what they're saying. There's that initial reaction, you have that makes you just want to cast aside whatever someone is saying when it doesn't align with your philosophy. But it takes strength and empathy to dig deeper and ask questions. Ask reasonable questions, right? Not cynical questions. Questions that show that you are interested, and say, okay, what does this mean? What does that mean? And what is your point exactly? Those kinds of questions. And then, for the whole online thing, I really do say, too often. I will work on that. As I was saying, for the whole online thing, social media, it can help you to take a break for a while. And I did that. I do it every now and then. Just take a break and get away from all the online stuff. It's a whole crazy world out there online, and it's a thing of its own. And then you just get off the phone or whatever device you're on, and you're like, oh wow, I'm still here. It's a totally different world. It's a world of people just expressing all the things that they wouldn't dare express in real life and pouring that out online. And when you get off there and get off and stop looking at all those perspectives, then you can interact with real humans and form ideas and opinions based on real interactions that you've had. And that is so valuable, more valuable than just hiding behind the power of a group of keyboard warriors and saying, oh, I don't like this person, I don't like these people. That's kind of low. Well, that's a very base form of expressing yourself or building opinions. It's best to do that by going out there, having real encounters and experiences to base this on. So you have to remember that you have the power to control whatever you see online. Not whatever you see online, whatever you expose yourself to. Well, that's technically the same thing. You get my point. You have the power to control your online experience. And you shouldn't let it control you and begin to define you. Instead, you should define the kind of thoughts you want to have, and based on that, select what you expose yourself to. So like I said, Try to engage in conversations with people that have different viewpoints. And you should do this intentionally. Try to understand why they think the way they do. And sometimes you gain a deeper conviction about your opinions by talking with others. If you're too scared to have any conversation whatsoever with anyone with a different opinion, then maybe it's because somewhere in your mind, you know that you have not built your opinions on concrete information, right? Your convictions are not based on concrete information. It has a shaky foundation that can crash if it's just pushed a little bit. And so you're a bit wary of exposing yourself to other people and having those conversations with them. I think it's a practice in itself, just putting yourself out there and having those kinds of conversations, open and respectful conversations. I think if you do that consistently, you just learn to feel respect for people in general, from all backgrounds and with different points of view. So I'll conclude by saying, if you want to avoid borrowed anger, you have to be self-aware and willing to challenge your own beliefs and assumptions. You have to be empathetic, practice critical thinking and healthy communication. And by doing so, you can survive in this crazy online world, and not just survive, but thrive and develop a healthy and productive mind. Thank you for listening. That's all for today's episode. I will see you in the next episode. Bye.